give us guidance and when all members are here in the delegation from DBSA and finance, so that we can be good to go at 9:30. It's a long day today. So it's going to be 9:30, but Ben, just give guidance and then we'll start.
Okay, lovely, we'll do that.
Sure. All right, good morning, colleagues. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you to this meeting this morning, which is a follow-up meeting on matters related to the DBSA on the basis of correspondence that was received by us from the Honorable B.
Chair, are you still there?
Looks like we lost him. Let's check.
At the DBSA 20. Sorry about that. The connection glitch. So, now the background to say we received correspondence from them to that we would develop a framework upon which we would be actually dealing with this matter. And so today is an opportunity consistent with the Alterum Partem Group to give the DBSA an opportunity to respond. We have had an interaction in one of our AG briefings, albeit not as in depth as we wanted to, but was to keep the matter alive. So, colleagues, this morning we've got the Minister of Finance, whom had indicated that he would not be attending and will be sending the DM, but has managed to be here, but will not be staying long. This was correspondence which was sent about a week ago in this regard. So, I appreciate the fact that the Minister has taken the time to actually have
Hello? I think the chair has disappeared, the general.
So we welcome the class.
Chairman, come in. Sure. Chairman.
Oh, all right. My network is a bit unstable. Sorry about that. So let's hand over to the Minister, who will make introductory remarks, if there are any, and then we'll hand over to DBSA to make their presentation, and then we will take it from there. So, Honorable Minister.
Sorry, Chairperson.
Yes, sir. Yes, General.
I didn't hear you properly in your introduction, but according to minutes of SCOPA, dated 16 November, there has been a legitimate expectation on some of us that SCOPA would by now have shared its draft operational framework regarding the envisaged hearings. So far, nothing has been produced. And if you go to the minutes of that day, you will find that there are, yes, Minister, we welcome him, he's here, but where is the rest of the people who were supposed to be here and the information we were promised that we'll get? So if you read those minutes, there are certain resolutions which are specific. So I doubt if we'll do justice on this
General,
today.
I'm losing the to the other colleagues.
Hello? Hello, sir?
I mean, a general ndiyakuva mna. But uSharman ngatuna nkinga. But General, as we wait for the guidance from the chair.
Yeah, sorry, colleagues, I'm not sure what is going on with my network. So, General, if you may please just repeat. I lost you at the part where you were saying it was a legitimate expectation.
We can change our names.
Boitumelo, please mute your mic. Boitumelo's iPad, right? General, if you can, I lost you at the part. I lost you at the part, General, where you said that there was a legitimate expectation.
That SCOPA would now, by now, would have shared its draft operational framework regarding the envisaged hearings. Part of that, or rather, this is linked to the minutes which were sent to us few days ago. Those minutes are clear about what resolutions we took, who should be part of this meeting today. So, but I understand other members of the board are not here. No, and is there any information we requested, we said we should be finished with? So let us go back to those minutes first before we can start this process.
No, General, this is precisely what this is. It's to assist the committee to arrive at that. What we did was we sent the issues that you had raised to DBSA, and in the introduction I was saying we are offering DBSA the opportunity to respond consistent with the alterum partem rule. So this is a work in progress, given the gravity of the allegations that have been made. And then the committee will, having had both sides, be in a better position to structure itself in terms of how it proceeds. So we are still very much within the parameters of what we agreed on. I suppose I got, maybe I was not audible in the first instance when I was saying that owing to an already packed program, this matter, which of course would have wanted to have dealt with it sooner, and that's why we're dealing with it now. And I indicated that when the AG appeared before us on other matters, we inquired about the DBSA related matters as part of empowering ourselves with information insofar as all the relevant stakeholders are concerned. So we are still very much on within the parameters of that, and so I think we can proceed because this is not a hearing. We are getting a hearing ordinarily, as colleagues know. We would have done focus areas and so on and so forth, but we had your side, General, we want to hear what DBSA has to say, and then we will be in a better position to deal with the matters. So I'll request that we proceed on with that background and outlook, and then we will take it from there. The matter is very much still alive in our view.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. It is strange that you are not summoning the other witnesses, which form part of the board. And those board members did write to you long before I approached the scoper. And they should be there. This is unfair. Completely.
No, General, I don't think so. As I'm saying to you, we need to be in a position to interact with all the relevant stakeholders on this matter before we arrive at a hearing. And where summons needs to be issued and so on, that will be done. I don't think it's unfair, and I will have to check with the administration of Scopa then as to whether there's any other correspondence. I am not aware of any other correspondence. I'm aware that this process was triggered by your correspondence. So if there's any other information, we will receive it. But as I'm saying, this is consistent with affording the DBSA to what I can say an initial reaction or response to the issues that you have raised, so that we can be in a better position to proceed with the matter. I don't think we are far apart on this side. Minister, may I hand over to you?
Okay, Chairperson, continue, but I will just listen. I will only participate further after you have actually call everybody as it was decided in the first meeting. So for now, DBSA, yes, they can say whatever they want, but I'm sticking to the resolutions which were taken by this meeting. Thank you.
No, that is noted, General. I think the committee is on the same page, or you're on the same page as us. We are very much also sticking to the resolution as well. Right, the Honorable Minister Mboweni, may I hand over to you?
Thank you very much, Chair, Honorable Chair, and members of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. Also, thank you very much to the DBSA team, led by the chairman of the board, Mr. Ino Godongwana, who is also here in the meeting. I thought I left the cabinet committee to be part of this meeting for a while before I go to the NCOP, where we're discussing the division of revenue bill. But I wanted to hear the views of the members of this committee on this matter. I have about 20 documents before me, starting with the letter from General Retired Holomisa and so on, about a whole litany of things which have to do with his concerns and about the DBSA. And I hope that we can deal with as many of the substantive issues as possible. I hope that despite his reservations, Honorable Member Holomisa will participate in the conversation so that we can try and deal with this matter towards finality. We might not finalize it today, but maybe we can make some movement towards finalizing the matter. So Honorable Chair, I hope that the conversations will be constructive and so on. From my vintage point of view, I think that the matters must be ventilated openly and candidly so that we can all leave this meeting with a view that our institution, the DBSA, is well run and well managed, and where there are faults, we should seek to correct them. But my view is that we should really have an open conversation, knowing full well that this conversation as well is within the public glare, and therefore we should, as honestly as possible, deal with these matters. And I hope Honorable Holomisa will participate despite his reservations. Chair, on that note, I please hand over to you. The DBSA team is here, as I said, led by the chairman of the board, Mr. Enoch Godongwana, and they will be willing to respond to your requests, whichever way they come. Thank you very much, Chair, and good luck. I'm sorry about your network. It just goes to emphasize the point I've been making in the other economic debates about the need for us to roll out broadband and issue the spectrum so that the whole country can benefit. I'm sorry about that, but I hand over back to you. Thank you very much indeed.
No, thank you very much, Minister, and I hope that you will make provisions in the
Is there a deputy chair of the committee
to address our challenges of network? I think our problem is saying thank you for that apology, but I'm hopeful that in the budget you will make provision for the speedy rollout of the necessary infrastructure to avoid us having network problems. So thank you for the comments you have made. Let's get the presentation then by the DBSA.
Good morning, Chairperson and honorable members of the committee and honorable Minister. My name is Enoch Godongwana, the chair of the board of DBSA. First and foremost, let me thank the committee for offering us the opportunity to respond to these allegations. Let me just say, as DBSA, we're committed to a transparent process and an engagement which is robust. To the extent that we might have made mistakes in the process, we are more than happy to correct them if pointed out. We not impervious to criticism. Having said that, my understanding of the issues, I can summarize them into two. The first one is the allegations of, or whatever, whether it's corruption or anything, in what is called the Cranebook D. That issue, my colleague, Marty Jans van Rensburg, will deal with it because she's the chair of the audit committee of the board, and that has been charged with dealing with that matter. And in fact, this controversy arose from that committee of the board. She will be able to take us through some of those issues. The second issue, as I understand it, is something that relates to board appointments and so on. The Act makes that as a prerogative of the minister. And the minister is entitled by law to pass regulations which can ensure that the board can do it on its own, but that those regulations have not been passed to date, and that's still the prerogative of the minister. To the extent that we can help the ministry in dealing with those questions, we are again available in dealing with those questions. So I'll hand over to my colleague, Marty, to take us through, who is the chair of the audit committee. Thank you, Chairperson.
Good morning, Honourable Chair and committee members.
Just 1 second, ma'am. Just 1 second.
Thank you.
Honourable Sonia.
Sorry, Chair. Well, good morning, Chair, the Minister, and members of the committee, and the board members. There's a critical
recording
issue.
In progress.
There's a critical issue which I think it is in the hands of the Minister, the appointment of the members of the board, which I thought that is going to cover that in his introduction for the purposes of giving over thereafter the board. Was the Honourable Minister raised a point where he created a doubt on whether the Minister had conducted any due diligence in the choice of the board members, which are currently serving in DBSA. I think that question, before the Minister could leave or give over to the board itself, it would be good that he could have an indication to that point specifically, and then other issues can be dealt with by the board.
Now, Abab-Somi, I think you are right. You are quite correct. If the Minister can maybe start there so that by the time he has to leave, we have covered that point. So if I can just ask that we go on that one, I think you're absolutely correct.
Chair, do you want me to say something now?
Yes, please, Minister. Yes, that will be, yeah.
The board of the DBSA has been in place for as long as the institution has been in place. And the way the board operates is that board members serve for a period of time, and when their term expires, the board will then make recommendations to the Minister of Finance about the replacement of those board members whose time has expired, or their reappointment, depending on how the internal evaluation process has gone about. So when I assumed my responsibilities as Minister of Finance in October 2018, I obviously inherited a board of directors at the DBSA, and that board of directors needed to be replenished. What happens is at the AGM, which is the annual general meeting, either the existing board members are re-elected to be on the board, or they retire by rotation and therefore replaced by nominees either from the board or from the shareholder, who is the Minister of Finance in this regard. And so I inherited a board, and it was renewed in 2019 and things like that. So other members retired from the board, and some were retained, and there was a replenishment and so on. And so that's how the process has gone. So the current board was reconfirmed at the last AGM, which would have been attended by the Minister of Finance and the officials from the National Treasury, particularly the asset and liability management, at which, as the minutes will show, I'm sure Marta will deal with that, some board members retired and others were elected onto the board, and others continued. So that's basically the process. It's basically in line with corporate governance, the King reports, guidance from the Institute of Directors, and given my experiences in the private sector, where I was chairman of some of the largest companies in South Africa, that's how the process would normally go. But given that this is a public institution as well, one is to take due care of public interest in this regard. And that's how we've sought to manage succession in the board, seeking to balance the technical expertise, public policy expertise, economics expertise, in balancing the board, black and white, gender sensitivity, and so on. So that's how we've gone about the composition of the board. And it is likely that from time to time, if a board member is not re-elected onto the board, they might feel unhappy and they might make all sorts of accusations, which is one of the matters I'm sure you're going to deal with, which I don't want to spoil the pond for now. But that happens. Sometimes you fall off the board and life goes on. When you're on the board, it's not a lifetime appointment, and one must understand that. And at the same time, one must be very careful, particularly public representatives, to be seen to be betting for this or other person who might know regionally or otherwise, who might come with all kinds of spurious accusations. I think we have to be careful about that in order to promote good corporate governance in our institutions. I certainly will not bet for anybody from Limpopo at all, but for anybody who is competent and able to do their job. So that's how the issues of the board are being handled. The company secretary is here. I think in the meeting, the chair of the board is here. The chair of the audit committee is here. And I'm sure they can buttress whatever I've said, as Steve Chete would have said, they can buttress it. Honorable Chair, that's all I can say for now, unless if there are any other questions, but I'll be in the meeting for a while until I go to the NCOP. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. I think I have, all right, Babu Somyo, I think let's get the presentation. The minister has given his explanation on that matter, and I think it's important because it empowers our understanding as well on these matters. So let's get the presentation then, and then we will take it from there. So can you hand over to DBSA? The presentation was circulated. I think we've got sharing right. Right?
Honorable Chairperson.
Yes, Honorable Hadebe with an H.
Are we at the stage where we can ask clarity from what the minister has said, or should we wait at this point in time?
May I request that we wait, because the presentation to an extent covers those issues, and then we'll take questions normally. The minister will advise. If Minister, you can give a heads up before you go, so that if at that point the presentation is not through, we can come back to you. Can you just park those questions, Honorable Hatebe? We will get to them as soon as the presentation is done, because it encompasses these issues.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, sure. DBSA, over to you.
Good morning, Chairperson, Honorable Chairperson, and members of the committee. As the Minister indicated, as well as our Chairman, Mr. Godendwana, there's a presentation that's been put together to try and respond to the allegations made. The way the presentation is structured, it starts with some of the processes that the DBSA is following in how investment decisions are made, and then it follows on with the management part of that. I will hand over to Patrick Damrini, who is the CEO of the DBSA. He will run us through the presentation, and at a later stage, I will add, when we come to the oversight responsibility of the Audit and the Risk Committee, that is then will help to clarify the processes. With that, I would like to hand over to Patrick Lamini, Chair.
Thank you very much, Marty. Good morning, Chairperson of the committee. Good morning to the honorable members of the committee, and morning to the Minister of Finance and the team from National Treasury. Maybe before I get started, Chair, with your permission, I would love just to quickly introduce who we are with the DBSA team that is here before the committee. It's myself as the CEO of the bank.
It's fine, you can proceed and do that, but I hope...
I'm going to be quicker.
No, what I'm saying is that I hope you are not going to be handing over the presentation to somebody else.
No, not at all.
Down a conveyor belt of sorts now. Right, so we can, because the substantive issue is the presentation.
Yes, Chair. It's myself, the Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Boitumelo Msako, the Chief Risk Officer, Mr. Mpo Kubedo, the Company Secretary, Ms. Batobilo Sowazi, our Legal Counsel, Mr. Ushaga Singh, as well as myself, and you heard from the Chairman of the Board and the Chairman of the Audit and Risk Committee of the Board. So, Chair, quickly, this is can I just the content of our presentation this morning is to the allegations as we understand them, discussed at SCOPA. Then we will cover our response to those allegations, and we will deal with the DBSA investment process, the chronology of the Cranbrook transactions, the allegation made against Poseidon. We will then also touch on the appointment of the board. I know that the Minister of Finance has responded, but we will also nonetheless still cover that and we'll get into conclusion. Chair, as I say, the allegation, you remember one, just the key allegations that were discussed. It says in the case of Cranbrook Property Projects Limited, where 3 companies are involved, namely Blue Horizon Investment 11, Mubarutsi Properties, and Proline Trading 60. The total of the outstanding loans allegedly stood at 426 million rand, and in the end, DBSA allegedly approved the write back of hundreds of millions of rands in interest according to the Induplam rule, but also wrote off 259 million rand. The second allegation was that we funded a company called Poseidon, which allegedly had links to Heritage General Partners, a company that had not been painted in favorable light by the Party Commission of the PIC. In the case of the board members, it is alleged that there has been victimization of certain board members and irregular reformation of the board. Then we would our response to this, and it's quite a number. We will also still have the sub-allegations of about 30 plus, and then we categorize this as we say. But then I want to, okay, in terms of the Blue Horizon Investment 11, in 2007, DBSA loaned 124 million to Blue Horizon 11 to develop the Litibeng Eco Estate in the Lipalal region in Limpopo. 65% of the loan was repaid, but this is unsubstantiated. Blue Horizon 11 was placed under liquidation in 2017, and the liquidators are attorneys. Please, no, now the market, I want to cover this properly. Please go back. This talks to, my apologies, Chair, Company Sec, what is happening with the presentation now? Okay. Okay. And I'm not sure now, Chair, I might have to take over the presentation because it's moving in a manner that is confusing to the committee and even myself, because as I'm on this thing, then this thing moves. But let me just cover that it is further alleged that DBSA did not comply they did not apply the Induplam rule correctly in the Blue Horizon 11 and core line trading 60 deals. And that begs the question, in how many other deals has this been the case? And secondly, because DBSA had not taken action to recover the debt for 3 years from when the date the debt was due, its legal right to proceed for the recovery was extinguished. Thirdly, it seems as if our recovery unit has not also for years been negligent in its monitoring of this bad debt, and it wanted to cause the Audit and Risk and Finance Committee to make decisions that would in effect excuse this negligence. There has also allegedly been a conspicuous material non-disclosure by the recovery unit in its reporting memo to the board, and the false assurances were also allegedly given that entities on the non-performing list were in fact being monitored. Fourthly, there are clear signs that the entire transaction might constitute BEE fronting. Fifthly, apparently decisions were made without honoring internal systems, poorly written contracts, lack of identity and entity numbers. No follow-up was done for years when the borrower neglected payments. Second slide, please. Forward. Chair, I've lost the slide.
Yes, you have, but you've got sharing rights on your side. It's not us.
I think that's the best thing. I just have to take over the slide then. Can I quickly then take over the slide, Chair? I'm just appealing for your patience to whilst I'm putting it back, sharing it from my side. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Sistombi put Ben, my understanding was that these sharing rights things were done earlier.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. It looks like we are being disabled. Okay, we can.
The sharing rights have been conferred, Chair.
That was my understanding.
We've been disabled by the host to share. I don't know why, Chair. Can the host
You
allow
haven't been
us to share?
disabled. Nobody has been disabled. The sharing rights are enabled right now.
That's what it says on our side, sir. I don't know why. Well, it says we've been disabled by the host.
You know, yeah, it's this.
Okay, it's coming back. It has come back, Chair.
Sure.
Okay, Chair. I can continue then. As I said, we covered our understanding of the allegation, and as I said, that the allegation number one was in the case of Cranbrook Property Project Limited, where 3 companies are involved, namely Blue Horizon 11, Mobaruti Properties, Proline Trading 60. The total of the outstanding loan alleges to that 426 million. And in the end, DBSA allegedly approved the write back of hundreds of millions of rands in interest according to the Induplam rule, but also wrote off 259 million rand. Secondly, DBSA funded a company called Poseidon, which allegedly had links to Harriet General Partners, a company that had been painted in an unfavorable light by the Mpati Commission. Thirdly, in the case of board members, it's alleged that there has been victimization of certain board members and an irregular reformation of the board. We also respond to over 30 individual sub-allegations, Chair. And for the number of logical categories in response, we cover DBSA investment process, chronology of the crime transaction, so that at least the committee understand fully how it happened. We also cover the Poseidon matter, as well as the process of appointing board members. I know the Minister of Finance, again, has covered this. And we are saying these allegations are premised on incomplete and inaccurate information. And this quickly, Chair, just covers the DBSA investment process. I'm not that actually, I'm saying that the scoper is that much interested in, but I think we feel it is important that we highlight and share how deals come into the organization. In terms of the early review report, which is a subcommittee within the bank of management, and then the due diligence gets done on these deals to see whether or not it falls within the mandate and whether or not actually we want to fund this. And the appraisal report to a subcommittee of the executive committee called to the IC, which is investment committee. And then once that is done, then an appraisal report is done and submission is made to the board subcommittee called the Board Credit and Investment Committee. And then once we get approval from the Board Credit and Investment Committee, we then go on into another due diligence where we are now actually advancing to the commitment. So that at least then we cross all the T's and dot all the I's. Once we secure commitments, we then go into the disbursement process where now money is being dispersed to the project. But again, that process really covers the KYC, how do we know who we're dealing with, and are there any PEPs in here, how is the fees in here, and the legal issues. And then when the deal happens, it gets monitored under our loan management unit. And then if there are issues, then it will then go into the workout and recovery unit. What this does, it ensures that there is a very fair and clear process so that the board is quite comfortable how we are managing, because as we're dealing with these things, we also have to comply with our IFRS 9 standards it stands for the International Financial Reporting Standards, which is the global practice. Commercial banks, international DFIs, the multilateral development banks also do exactly the same. And this is to make sure, I mean, we are departing from IS 39, I think, for international accounting standards, 39, where it was more backwards looking in terms of the loan, but the IFRS 9, International Financial Reporting Standard 9, it looks at the remaining life of the project to say, what are the prospects of recovery? And this is done solely to ensure that the investors and interested stakeholders in our financials are not misled by us overstating our profitability and overstating our assets. So it is something that is done globally. These impairments or provisions are really done to ensure that we comply with these international standards, to ensure that our holders of our papers, because we rely heavily on our capital market, domestic capital markets, and international lines of credit within international organizations. So we have to make sure that our reporting complies with those standards. Otherwise, we will be in a massive challenge as an institution, as we are reliant on capital market, and therefore reputation and issues like this have got to be dealt with in as transparent a manner as possible. And our response to this, the Cranbrook transaction, just quickly, Chair, in 2006, DBSA was approached by Cranbrook, funding bulk infrastructure for housing in Limpopo, and as well as the BEE shareholder taking 17% in Cranbrook. And within DBSA developmental mandate at the time, this actually was undertaken, and Dipalale as the region was identified as a group node at the time, increasing housing demand due to growing mining sector. And you would recall, Chair, that Dipalale was actually one of the fastest growing regions globally. And the anticipation, because of the mining activities in that area, was such that there were going to be quite a number of mining activities and housing needs needed in the region. So then the due diligence was performed. But then in 2007, 2008, the loan of 10 million was approved okay, let me go back to the impact of the global financial crisis, which is 2000, but let me go to 2007, loan of 10 million approved to Mparutsi to acquire 17 shareholding in Cranbrook. And board investment committee approved a 5-tranche 124 million loan to Blue Horizon for barack infrastructure in the Lipalale region in 2007.
Sorry, Chair.
And then,
yeah, so Minister here.
Yes.
I think Patrick, if the chair could allow me,
Yes,
Patrick, one of the things that you should understand with members of parliament is that they also want the detail. If you say Cranbrook company and so on, or this company, Mauparutsi and so on, the members of parliament want to know who are the directors of those companies, who are the people, because they want to try and find if there are any connections and things like that. So if you could give, Chair, if you agree with me that they should give you that kind of detail so that you are able to understand this issue of PEPs and PEEPs and so on. Chair, I hope I'm correct. I'm helpful in that regard. Patrick, please.
Yes, we do share that, Minister. It's still within the presentation. All the directors of these companies, we do have them in here. We will be able to share with the committee accordingly. But I can assure the committee that there were no PEPs involved in these deals. These were just the property development individuals. And but I'm happy, Minister, as you say, through the chair, to share the directors in all these companies. We do have their list here.
Yeah,
we will share as part of the presentation.
Yes, it's less about the assurances and more about the transparency. And I'm pretty certain Honorable Hade would have started off there when we were doing the questions. Because when we receive presentations, the assumption is that you will speak to the presentation and not read it. So the minister is absolutely correct in that outlook, particularly in this committee and in light of the allegations that we are dealing with, to enable us to be able to make informed decisions about how we proceed handling this matter. So I think let's go to the substantive granular issues, which are at the heart of what we are dealing with here, so that the guidance you are receiving from your executive authority is correct. Right? Can you proceed?
I think the difficulty, Chair, is that we were presenting not because we were guided in terms of what the questions. I understand what you're saying, but we have a certain chronology in which we put these matters as a Chair, and as such, I'm happy to then go to that slide and share with you. Yes, Chair.
Let's not venture down excuses. You are an established body which has been reporting to Parliament for years. You are, and you've received guidance now from your executive authority. Let's not venture down that road, because you're gonna then agitate the members, and so the guidance that has been given, let's go to it without qualification or without seeking to explain it. You may proceed.
Chair, it is Martie van Rensburg here. We have the details available if you would like to have the names at this stage in relation to the presentation itself.
Yeah, let's get them, as the guidance from your executive authority has been given.
Okay, Chair, in relation to the group of companies, there was Mapurutsi Properties Limited. This was the BEE shareholders, and the transaction of funding their 17% shareholding in Cranbrook Properties. The shareholders were Shokeng Maglake and Matsupia Matlatla. Then we have a number of directors that had common shareholding between Blue Horizon 11 and Proline 60 Trading, and they were Hoffman Prinsloo, Pieter du Plessis, Dr. Cor Papenfoos, Dirk Conradi, and Matsupia Matladla. At the stage when this transaction was entered into, the normal investment processes of the DBSA do background checks, what we call as part of our due diligence processes. And the processes at that stage did not reveal that there are any connected parties or a politically exposed party that falls under the PEP designation. If that will help with the details.
That's fine. Let's proceed. There's a particular context now. The names will be submitted. If they can be sent to Mrs. Nkabinde and Mr. Kali, and then other issues will be ventilated in the question and answer session. Right, Babu, that you may proceed.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. As I was covering this one, Chair, thanks, Marty, for that. And then in 2007, 2008, the loan for 10 million rand, which was a 17% equity shareholding by the BE partners of Cranbrook, and as Marty says, Mashupia Matlala was going to be the 70% shareholder in Cranbrook, and the amount for this was 10 million rand. And in the same year, 2007, 2008, the Board Investment Committee approved 124 million rand to Blue Horizon for bulk infrastructure in the Ipalala region. And again, and in the same years, 2007, 2008, again, another 5 tranche, 125 million to Proline Trading 60 for another bulk infrastructure. Now this is in the greater Dubatse in the Beggarsford area in Libom. So now in total, this takes the total amount to the Cranbrook group to 259 million rand, as that was disbursed by DBSA. And then we had the global financial crisis in 2009, and we saw a massive downturn in the mining activities globally, and commodities suffered quite immensely. And again, we saw also a decline in housing demand. And Mapurutsi, as a result of the limited demand for housing, they then asked for the restructuring of their debt, as they could not service their debt accordingly. But Mapurutsi was still able to pay from 2009 to 2011 about 10.4 million rand. Of what it could have been loaned to them. But and 6 million of this 10.4 was the 6.6 million was the capital, and the rest was the interest. And the restructure and repayment Proline Trading, they only repaid 24.1 million rand of the 125 million rand that they had been loaned. And this is between 2011 and 2020. And Proline 60 and Blue Horizon agreements were also amended, extending the repayment period, which is quite a normal process for us when we see projects going into difficulty. We then restructure and see how we can be able to accommodate them given the prevailing market conditions and economic conditions. Then the agreement provides for DBSA to receive at least 70% of proceeds of every stand sold. This is part of the restructure check. Then in the repayments and portfolio monitoring, and Blue Horizon repaid about 113.5 million rand between 2010 and 2017, You will recall, Chair, Blue Horizon 11 had been loaned about 124 million for the DTBN eco housing development in the Lipalare area. And of that 124 million, they paid 118.5 million. And Cranbrook transaction managed by post-investment portfolio, this is the recovery unit that we're talking about. Then the recovery strategy 2018 to 2021, Chair, long-term turnaround strategy adopted, and we also try to see how best we can be able to optimize the collection and the recovery of our loans. And then this is something that we do for all other transactions, Chair, and it's not just unique to this Cranbrook one. I mean, maybe I can also highlight that, I mean, just last day alone, we, in the previous financial year, we wrote off about, writing off, but maybe impairment provisions. We made impairment provision because there's a very big difference there. Impairment provisions of about 4 billion for the previous, given the economic conditions that was happening. And all of this was part of that, Chair. But again, what is key for the subcommittee to understand is DBSA's loans in the 124 million to Blue Horizon 11, as well as the Proline trading 60, the 125 million, where all actually we are secured by mortgage bonds, which in terms of the Prescription Act 68 of 1969, only expires or prescribes after 30 years. So we are a secured creditor in this case, Chair, and all these bonds are registered in DBSA's name. And the valuation and reporting as non-performing, this happened. Blue Horizon placed in liquidation in 2017 when the civil engineering company that was doing their part of their development and then applied for liquidation of Blue Horizon 11. And they still are undergoing that process as we speak, but we have stated our claims and it has been accepted as such, Chair, to the liquidators. By 2019, still minimal sales and turnaround strategy reviewed. So in this case, because of the change of the economic condition in the Lipalare region and the greater Tubatse area, we saw the housing took a serious nosedive. So as a result, it was not then easy to see these sales taking place. And we saw that the repayments from these guys was really becoming to be a struggle for them. But then in Duplam interest was written off in 2020. As you all understand, Chair, then Duplam interest says you cannot actually have interest that is bigger than the capital amount. And as such, you need to make sure that you keep on writing off anything in excess of the capital amount to ensure and to ensure the collectability, and also to ensure that you do not overstate your profitability. As you know that when they make these provisions, they also reduce your profitability. And also so when that happens, that's what happens in this case, Chair. But yes, the legal process is still ongoing. And again, and forensic investigation on this current book, and the board subcommittee, which is chaired by Marty Ransom van Rensbeck, in addition to internal audit forensic review, DBSA board also mandated an external independent legal investigation, which was undertaken by DM5 Incorporated, and looking into this whole Cranbrook transaction, because we were quite interested, Chair, to understand whether there's been any untowards, any maladministration as alleged, or corruption, in this case, any involvement of DBSA employees or any involvement of pets or whatsoever in this case. This investigation has recently concluded, and outcomes are currently being considered by the bank and also the AG. While the matter remains under consideration, it's important to draw Scopa's attention, Chair, to the fact that no fraud, corruption, or non-compliance with applicable laws and regulations were identified by the external investigators in the Cranbrook transaction. And on the Poseidon matter, and I think maybe, Chair, before I get to the Poseidon matter, this area in the Lipalare area, this is where Medupi is, the Bakersford and the Greater Tubatse municipality. this area, Bakersford, the anticipation here by the bank and the markets and the mining houses was that they were going to replace the Rustenburg as the platinum belt or platinum producing area. This is the Dubatse and the Bakersford. And within the next to the adjacent to the Midubi power station, we were anticipating the coal mining activities to happen. And all of these have since taken a nosedive, Chair. Maybe then I can get into the Poseidon matter. The Poseidon matter, this is a matter, Chair, and Poseidon is a BE company that actually is being is owned by Black professionals, quite accomplished Black professionals, and they are focusing on the water and wastewater infrastructure, both in South Africa and in the region. So, and these guys approach us because we do provide what we call risk capital. Risk capital is our project preparation that the bank assigns. And what it does, Chair, is that when we give project prep, it is about to look at the feasibility of the project, to look at the viability of the project, and also to then see how best it can be structured so that it becomes investable and to be able to crowd in the private sector. So this is the risk capital that you ordinarily would find from development finance institutions and multilateral development banks, as well as governments. In the private sector, insurance houses, asset managers, they are quite scared to put in this project prep facility or this risk capital because of the risk, the very nature of the risk that is involved. So these guys approached us for that. And we were quite happy because it was aligned to our mandate. And also it was talking to BEE and the support that they needed. And again, Chair, as a policy instrument of the state and being a DFI, these are the kinds of things that we do. And we recognize the impact of catalyzing project prep funding prominently for smaller size private sector water projects. And really they were becoming quite unique because we don't find many who actually play in this space, Chair. So then there was a funding of in 2020 March, funding was approved for 50 million rand by our board credit and investment committee. It was actually in full compliance with the investment process and a due diligence focus on the risk from politically exposed persons and adverse media associated with the project. Appropriate risk mitigation also was instituted. And again, and when we had of the noise, the board asked for additional due diligence. This now in June 2020, when the Poseidon issue was brought to media attention, DBSA board subjected the transaction to an enhanced independent due diligence, which was undertaken by Workman's attorneys. And then in terms of the facility, the 50 million project prep facility that was committed and conditionally pending the satisfaction of condition precedents. And to date, no funds have been disbursed to this. But I can assure you, Chair, again, that we were very satisfied from the Workman's attorney's report that there were no PEPs as such involved here, and that there was no previous board member of DBSA who was ever involved in this in here whatsoever. And that the former chairman of DBSA, and as it was addressed, Mr. Leketi, who is only a non-executive chairman and has no personal interest in Herrick General Partners as an organization. And I can then get into the process of appointing board members, Madam Chair, but maybe Chair, I'm not sure if the chairman want me to cover this, but I'm happy to cover. The chair might just add. The appointment of board members, and the minister has covered this, the appointment of board members is done in a fair and transparent manner. And in this particular case, Chair, we really had a long discussion with our colleagues in National Treasury and the Minister of Finance, and trying to make sure that he was happy with the process we are embarking on. Because as an institution that has also been tasked with setting up the infrastructure fund, we felt that it's very, very important that we really enhance the capacity, experience, and knowledge of board members. And in terms of the DBSA Act, it says the minister that minister should gazette regulation on the process of board members' appointment, and it is the prerogative of the minister in terms of the final appointment of this. But as we have the nomination committee, which is a subcommittee of the board that looks at the individuals and then recommends this to the board and make sure that in terms of DBSA Act, then the minister will make that final decision in terms of that. But we are quite very rigorous, very robust, and I can assure the committee that the members that we got, we couldn't have actually gotten any better people to really add value in terms of their experience and exposure in the space that we're in. And again, majority of members in terms of the HRNC were coming to an end, and hence would be completed if they made recommendations. This now talks to the nomination committee, because as you recall, the chairperson of the board, Mr. Kodongwane, and the minister discussed the fact that the vast majority of the members of the human resources and nomination committee were due to, their terms were due to come to an end. And in order to avoid the conflict, because they were vested in their renewal. So the chairperson then agreed with the minister that we will formulate a committee that's going to look into this. And yes, I was there as the CEO, and the company secretary was there as a governance advisor to the board. The chairperson of the board was there. And we looked into these matters, and we were able to engage with the assistance of an external service provider who actually had headhunted these members. And we then were able to make a recommendation through the chairman to the Minister of Finance. And these guys were thoroughly vetted as well to make sure that there are no controversies. As I said, Chair, as a bank, we depend very much on the debt capital market. And our bondholders are very, very sensitive to issues of governance. And it is in that spirit that we wanted to, because they also want us to also then, through the statements that we issue through the JSE, we also announce the appointment of these members. And they also must be happy in terms of their own optics as to who has been appointed. That and that was just talking in terms of the process of how we appointed these, and again, all the members who were not renewed, whose term were not renewed, and their term had come to an end. No one was taken out through his or was actually his or her term was still in effect. So it was through a fluxion of time that they were not actually taken on board. And again, we're saying these allegations, we look at these allegations very seriously, and they have a massive reputational repercussion for the bank. But we also respect, Chair, through you, that as the police instrument of the state and being DBSA, we are accountable to South African Parliament, and this we fully understand and respect, and we want to assure you, Chair, that we will cooperate fully with you, because it is in the best interest of DBSA, it is in the best interest of the country, as well as the debt capital market, because they don't want to be seen to be associated with people who are doing wrong things. So, and again, Chair, and as I said earlier on, that there's no evidence of conflict of interest in all these deals. There's been no collusion that actually we have become aware of, even with further investigations or fraud on all these transactions. And we're saying the failure of the transaction in question is primarily attributable to the economic recession in the aftermath of the financial crisis in 2007, 2008. And again, despite sovereign credit rating, DBSA is a standalone rating. We are performance and our audit outcomes place is one of the best governed SOBs around. And I can assure you, Chair, this one, that actually we get the most cost-effective funding from the market because of the governance that actually we are ascribed to as the bank, and because also of the performance of the bank. We really are a very frugal and a very robust institution, and we do engage quite robustly with our colleagues in National Treasury, and I'm sure they are here as well, and they can also attest to the robust engagement that we have, and also to our own processes in terms of internal controls and governance, because we have to continuously engage our bondholders to take them through what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing. But unfortunately, as we speak, the debt capital market has been completely decimated. It doesn't exist at this point in time, but we're seeing that it's slowly trying to come back. But we have to resolve into raising funding through the lines of credit with our international partners to be able to continue to disperse and to be able to continue to honor our commitments with the project sponsors in the country, Chair. But again, improvement in the DBSA governance standards are ongoing, and we always understand that there's always room for improvement. But again, it is important that we ensure that we drive the infrastructure development in the country and the reliance on the South African economy in ensuring that the infrastructure fund is driven and DBSA also performs to its optimum level. It's something that we quite seized with, and it's something that we drive quite strongly. And what I'll do here, Chair, after this will be more the allegations. We do have that. If the Chair wants me to go through them, I can quickly go through them as well, Chair, with your permission. I see Marty also wants to come in terms of what I've just covered. I will be guided by yourself, Chair. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much for that. I think, colleagues, we can go to questions unless there is something that has been left out.
Can I?
Chair?
One in future. Chairperson.
Right, I hear you as the chairperson.
Yes. I just want to add some few dimensions on the board appointments. First and foremost, National Treasury as our shareholder employ the services of the Institute of Directors to do an assessment of the board. An assessment, I wanted to place that on as part of the, if you look into this thing. What it did do, it looked at the skills profile of the board and its shortcomings. That's the first point you must understand as you construct your board. You've got to take that into account. It also pronounced on the individual board members. That's one set of issues. The search company which was employed to look for board members came to the same conclusion about the skills profile of the board and what is needed. And we drew the attention of the board, of the minister, to those shortcomings. The last point is that any board member who's appointed on DBSA will go to a rigorous check of that individual. Sometimes if it's done to you, you get to some extent an irritation, but it's done. Right? What is called, I don't know if the company secretary knows it better, but that process of rigorous checking board members is done. Interesting thing, I'm just now being appointed into two international boards. I find it quite interesting. One is listed in London, one is listed in the New York Exchange. The amount of rigorous checking on you as an individual is massive. So that happens to all board members in DBSA precisely because the reason these skills and this integrity of these individuals is critical is that we go to the markets we're not recapitalized by the state. We go to the markets in order to raise capital, and they look into the quality of that board. For instance, some of them require that a chair of our audit must be a chartered accountant, and Marty is a chartered accountant. And we've decided to add a second chartered accountant so that we've had an experience when one of the chartered accountants left. So a second chartered accountant in order to enhance the skill profile of the board. So the decision about the composition of the board is not an easy matter. Thank you, Chairperson.
Chair?
Yes.
Smarty speaking. If I can just maybe add the board oversight responsibility around these transactions and what transpired, if the committee would like to hear that.
All right, if you may be brief. And
I will
Honorable
be
Hannah,
brief.
you'll be first off the bat, and then Honorable Liz.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Just to say, 2 times a year, the combination of the Audit and Risk Committee and the Board Credit Investment Committee sit and looks at the impairments of debt on our books in accordance with the accounting standards that Patrick referred to. When we dealt specifically with the Cranbrook Group, the assessment at the committee was that, yes, the financial impairment decision needs to be made. But in addition to that, after a debate at the Audit and Risk and the Combined Audit and Risk and Board Credit Investments Committee, which we call Evaluations Committee, it was decided to ask the internal audit to do an investigation going back to the start of the transaction, to be able to see that there's compliance to policies and procedures at the time of the transaction, throughout the life of transaction, and if there are any gaps in our current processes and policies. So that investigation has been done. What the head of internal audit did also had the opportunity to bring external legal skills in to assist in this evaluation. So those reports has been concluded in the beginning quarter of this year. We've got one report outstanding, but just to note that the findings was that the current processes and procedures of the DBSA do not have gaps. So it's compliant with best practice in the market. Number 2, an analysis was made around decisions that was taken and whether those decisions were taken through the life of those loans in terms of the policies and procedures, and it was found that it was taken in terms of that. The third item what is being done was there's a legal recovery process on the go against the Cranbrook Group, which entails a number of actions. Plus, where we found certain parties not providing information, how can I say, that can be questionable, those parties is also being reported to the Hawks, and legal action has been taken to be able to recover those monies. Thank you, Chair.
All right, no, thank you very much for that. Right, Honorable Hadebe. And then the Honorable Liz.
Thank you, Chairperson, and let me welcome the presentation. I will focus on the process of the appointment of the board chair. And the presentation clearly states that this process is done in a fair and transparent manner. Now, my first question would be in relation to the search company. Can we get, as an outsider, can we be furnished or assisted with the process which is fair and transparent in terms of the board appointment? How is the process being conducted by this search company? Because to simply say it's fair and transparent, it does not give details on how the search is conducted, given the fact that it's indicated that the HRNC was conflicted in this regard. So I will ask this first question and then I'll expect an answer. It's going to be an interactive session.
Okay, let's do that. We will pose one question and get an answer, because this will enable us to finalize on the framework and the way forward on these matters, right? Let's get, so Honorable Hadi, let me give you 10 minutes, ne? And then Honorable Liz and Honorable Ment in that way. So I won't come in, just facilitate your section.
Chair,
Yeah, if they can also remove the presentation so that we can have a sight of who we're dealing with.
Chair, the board appointment, the search company, the first thing, the search company is an administrative issue in terms of its appointment. There's a tender process, which leads to an appointment on of a search company. Even now, we do have some vacant posts. We are going to go through a similar exercise. And that company then takes a mandate in terms of the skills profile that you require. They themselves do an assessment of the skills profile. They then follow their process and come with a short list to the board, and in this case to the committee appointed by the minister, because it's the minister's prerogative, where a committee appointed by the minister, which is going to make recommendation to him. And it does what is called an interview of the selected individuals and make the appropriate recommendation to the minister. Thank you.
Chair, my question or interest is in relation to the fair and transparent process. How is the nomination conducted? How does the search company source these shortlisted names? Do they advertise? The key and critical issue here is me understanding the fair and transparent part. Hence, I was deliberate in the process that gets followed. And I'm sure when you receive these shortlisted names, you are given a process that was undertaken and the interest that it arose from the public, and those that were shortlisted, they were shortlisted from a pool, if my understanding is correct. So I'm asking on those bases so that we are all clear. I don't want to have assumption in terms of how the names are drawn from the public. Given the fact that the presentation speaks about the gazetted regulation on the process of the board members that ought to be appointment vis-a-vis the HRNC, which in this regard, we are told it was conflicted. Now, the follow-up question and an obvious question would be, what does the regulation say in that regard when those that are entrusted to process the issue of nomination are conflicted? So I assume that is gazetted. Hence, I ask those questions for you to be able to clearly stipulate and demonstrate to us that indeed this process is fair and transparent.
I see that the Honorable Minister wants to give a response.
Okay.
The Honorable Minister?
No, Chair, I'm sorry about this. I have to rush to the NCOP, and so you'll forgive me. But let me just indicate that basic experience in terms of filling of the posts which have become vacant on a board of directors of any company is a complex process. The board of directors would normally have what we call a nominations committee or a directors affairs committee, which is charged with the responsibility, amongst others, of the refreshment of the board of directors. And in the process of the refreshment of the board of directors, that nominations committee or the directors affairs committee might seek the assistance of an external agency, i.e. normally what we call a search agency or a human resources agency. Under normal circumstances, that human resources agency or personnel agency would have in their database a number of people who they know their skill set, and depending on the brief you have given them, they will source from within that database people that they think might fit what you want. And then they will interview them and check them out for you, do psychometric tests and all these other conflict of interest issues and so on, and then submit to you a number of names from which the nominations committee of the company will then decide which names they prefer, and they will interview those people again as well. Now, in this instance, because this is a state-owned company, after the nominations committee has gone through that process, they will then approach the shareholder, in this instance, myself, acting on behalf of the state, and say, we've done the following work with respect to the vacancies which have arisen. Here are the following names which have come out of the process. We will be comfortable with you agreeing on any of these names, and because we've done all the checks necessary. I don't second guess the board of directors. I'm not one of those ministers who micromanages the board of directors. The reason why you have a board of directors is because you trust these men and women to do their work. I don't micromanage them. I don't have the time anyway to micromanage anybody, and I have no interest in micromanaging everybody. I've got too much work in my hands. Once
they sort from the pool which they have, I want to arrive at the conclusion where indeed I will be satisfied that the process was transparent. There's a difference when you headhunt, there's a difference when you advertise and open it to public. You spoke about public interest. So what I'm trying to get at here, when you received the shortlisted candidate, was the process explained to you to say, we have headhunted these people, or we had advertised from the pool of qualified?
Can I explain this to you?
Yes, that's the question that I'm posing.
Chair?
Please proceed,
Chair?
Honorable Minister.
Chairman?
Yes, you may proceed. Yeah, Honorable Hadebe, I'm trying to save time by not interjecting too much.
Yes, Chair, I thought I've explained that. If Honorable Hadebe doesn't understand that, I'm sorry about it. Maybe it's a weakness of my Bantu education, but I've explained, and I don't want to repeat myself. So if he doesn't understand that, tough love. Now, I have to proceed.
No,
and say
Honorable Minister.
Point of order, please.
No,
Point of order.
Due respect. No, colleagues, I can handle this question. With due respect, you did not explain to us whether or not the search and selection company advertised. You gave a general statement that ordinarily, I'm also part of the board member. I came from the process. The post where I'm serving as a board was advertised. We were not headhunted. So the direct question is, this search company that, because of the conflict of the HRNC, did they advertise or did they draw from the pool of candidates that they have without advertising? That's the direct question, and I'm not getting an answer. I'm saying here, what I want to get sense of is the transparent and fairness of the process.
All right, just 1 second. we endeavor as much as possible in this committee, and I think successfully so, to have a constructive engagement, at times robust. Minister, I think your parting short on that last question is unfortunate. It's just the nature of the probing. So when it becomes issues now, tough love, I don't think that helps. And I'm trying to contain the members. I don't think that is constructive here, because if you leave us not understanding your explanations, we will take decisions on the basis of what we've taken out of it. So I think let's endeavor to make sure that the answers, the questions are answered to the extent to which the understanding will be grasped on both ends. So I'm just cautioning that let's not venture down what may now lead us to an acrimonious engagement. Right, Minister?
But Chair, I also seek your protection because I hear what you're saying, Chair, and I respect what you said. But I think to the best of my ability, I've explained the issues. If the honorable member wants the head of HR, the DBSA, to explain that, I'm sure they can. At this point, if at all possible, may I please be excused? I need to join the NCOP. The chairman of the board will remain with you, and if you want the HR director to explain what I've just explained, I'm sure they can. Chair, with your permission, may I be excused?
No, that's fine, Minister. We hear you. And it indicated that there is a budget vote in the NCOP. Honorable Hadebe, we will park the sections of the minister because we're going to make a determination at the end on this matter. So, Minister, yes, you may be excused, and we will continue with the board of the DBSA. And I assure you, Minister, that everybody is protected, right? The chairperson of the board.
Chair, can I take you through, first and foremost, the legal framework? The legal framework is that the board is appointed by the minister. The Act then says, unless the minister has passed regulations that says the board must be appointed otherwise. That is the starting point. Unfortunately, I can see honorable member is referring to the regulations. Those regulations, successive ministers have not passed the regulations dealing with this matter. That was the complication that we confronted with as we were debating amongst ourselves whether we're conflicted or not conflicted. It turned out we are debating a matter which is above us. We then agreed that minister, we sent a letter to minister and said, given the fact that we are conflicted, this is a process we're setting in motion as the board, but it became clear that we don't have the locus standi. That's what the law says, because you have not delegated regulation. And as part of that discussion, the minister was also shocked and said, okay, let's agree, let's find a way of passing the regulations. We have not had the regulations yet. And in the meantime, said the minister, okay, I want to appoint the board as reflected, but I want your help in terms, appoint a search company, then in terms of that, and work with the search company and make recommendations. That's how this process unfolded. The second set of Mr. Hadebe's question, does this a search company advertise publicly or not? Normally, I would be misleading you. I must confront this question head on. My understanding, they build up a database which is broad-based across the skills and across industry sectors. That's what makes them useful, and therefore would not necessarily advertise. They would go into that pool. But parallel to that process, there's a public process which National Treasury has, which is a database arising out of a transparent process of advertisement. And if you ask the search company, did we give them people from National Treasury? They will say yes, because what we did is a combination of that database and the combination of the database, which is a process of public from National Treasury. That's the combination from which the search company worked from. Thank you.
Chairperson of the board, I welcome your attempted response. Your first bulletin in the process of appointing the board, you clearly and boldly stated that the appointment is done in a fair and transparent manner. Now, the question that I'm asking, and I don't understand why it seems to be so difficult, when a vacancy arises, the search company, now it has been established that what the Act provide has not happened, because you said the Act provide that the minister should gazette a regulation on the process of the appointment of board members. That regulation has not been gazetted. Now, when the search company, which is what I'm trying to get here, is given this mandate, if Bheki Hadebe is not part of the pool and there's a vacancy that has arisen, Bheki won't be privileged to be considered unless Bheki is part of the pool. A case in point currently, which is underway, the appointment of the NYDA in Parliament, that process get advertised widely. People apply. It does not seek one to belong to a certain database in order for those individuals to be considered. So when you gave the brief to this search company, did you say to them they must advertise, or you simply said they must rely on their database, the same database of National Treasury you are referring to? I'm asking this because of your first bulletin, fair and transparent process. From where I'm sitting, if you are saying to me, only those who are registered with the database, and that registration can be at any time, but at the particular point when a vacancy arises, you don't advertise, you only rely on the database. Is that my understanding? I want to measure your fairness and transparent in those two critical questions that I'm asking.
Honorable Hadebe, I think I'm trying to be as honest as I can, because the first thing I said is that, to my knowledge, the database of a search company is not a product of a public investment or of a public advertisement. That I considered. Okay, let me just proceed. Why do we refer? We must have a different understanding of transparency. Why do we refer to that as a transparent process? It's precisely because industry standards across industries in the private sector, directors are appointed through that process. And in industry standards, it's called a transparent process. We might have had a wrong definition if it's the view of the committee that we need to change our approach on board appointments. By all means, we will consider that, honorable member. But I'm saying, by industry standard, that's accepted as transparent. And we added a dimension because the Treasury one is a product of a public advertisement. So by putting all those together, you're beginning to combine and achieve that. But I concede your point, it does not qualify in terms of your definition.
So does it quite, that from your point of view, you regard that as being inclusive and transparent? And so no, I'm saying, remember, there's a difference when you supply your details to be in a database of any company. But when there's a direct advertisement calling for application for a particular post, that's totally different. You might draw interest from a wider spectrum of qualifying and interested parties. But when you only rely on a particular database, for example, when procurement processes in any municipal department, they draw from those who are in their database, they also advertise and inform interested parties that for you to qualify, you must register with the database. They don't, because they have a database, therefore limit the scope of work to those who are within their database. They still broadly advertise. That is the question that I wanted to get a sense from you, that were you given those details of how they undertook their selection processes, or you only relied on what was given to you, which was the short list? You did not have an edge or a need to ask whether or not they've advertised broadly. And if you have not done that, it's fine. We'll then derive at the conclusion based on what you are saying. But I'm not in any way forcing you to say something that you have not yet had an opportunity to investigate thorough.
No, that's why I'm saying, honorable member, that I don't want to mislead the committee and pretend that something, we are operating on the basis of industry norms. If it's the feeling of the committee that we need to go beyond that, in addition to databases we must advertise, it's a view we will take into account moving forward. Thank you.
Right, Honorable Hadebe, you can wrap it up so that Honorable Liz can come in.
Now, yes, Chair, in wrapping up, having this remuneration nomination committee and having indicated that they are conflicted, is there a prescribed regulation that clearly stipulates what then happens when this committee is charged with the nomination process is conflicted? Or is just when you get to that point, it's then that you determine what next? Or you have a set a standardized process in terms of having members that are conflicted, yet they are charged with this responsibility?
Two things, Honorable Member. The first one is there are standard procedures for governing conflict of interest, irrespective of whatever, at DBSA. So we must take that into account. The second thing is that in having experienced this thing, in anticipation of the change of regulation by the minister, we've set up now a new nominations committee whose main task is to deal with this matter. We've learned out of this process, there's no doubt about that. Even today, we're beginning to learn. So we will learn and make the necessary adjustment. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Let me give other colleagues an opportunity. If time permitting, Chair, I will make follow-up because from time to time we've been referred to norms and standards.
Okay.
And those norms and standards, Chair.
We will come back but don't worry. Honorable Mente, was it you or Honorable Liz? I'm sure Mazambane won't mind. Let's take Honorable Mente Mazambane and then we'll come to you. Honorable Mente, I see a hand. There's a hand. Mazambane.
Anginayo inkinga angaqhubeka.
Oh, ngiyabonga. Honorable Mente.
Enkosi Chair, Chair, I have two questions. I'll ask both of them and then they can be responded to. There is an investigation under Cranbook, and your response says you have undergone audit forensic interview. You undertook audit forensic review on the account, and the investigation has recently concluded, but the outcomes are yet to be considered by DBSA and Auditor General. I want to know what's the time frame for you to get back to us with everything that you and the Auditor General would have agreed upon? When will we get that information? And then the second question is, you are on the third bullet, you are referring to, you are actually making an emphasis that there was no fraud or corruption or non-compliance was identified. But then there's a problematic terminology used, external investigators in the Cranbrook transactions. That immediately then raises eyebrows. Can we get the names of the external investigators? Because here in South Africa, we have a very difficult situation where it starts with estate entities, where the definition of due diligence is given a very different meaning altogether. Then when it comes to internal investigators and external investigators, there is a problem with their reputation currently. So we need to know who are these external investigators that have given you a thumbs up that no, be rest assured that there's no fraud, there's no corruption, there is no non-compliance altogether, so that we are also at ease with the people. Thank you, Chair.
Let's get responses.
Okay, I'm happy to come in, Chair. It's Patrick here. The external investigators were DM5 Attorneys Incorporated, Honorable Member. DM5 is the name of the attorneys firm that investigated this matter. In terms of the time frame as to when the Auditor General and the board will look into this matter, I don't think that actually it will take that long. I can safely say probably by end of June, we can easily share the results thereof with the committee, seeing that the investigations are done. All that is left is for the conclusion by the various structures within the bank in terms of the oversight structures and the Auditor General. So it should then be doable that we can share the results thereof with the committee by the end of this month. Thank you, Chair.
I would, sorry, just a bit, Chair. Maybe we come, CEO, the board, unless you've changed, is on the 30th of June, which means we could aim for the earliest beginning of July.
All right, who's who now?
Sorry, Chair, I was adding to the CEO and said—
So you are done. I wanted to make sure that you are done. Honorable Member, we can head back to you then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sure, that's fine, that's fine.
No, I am fine, Chair. We will await for the responses, but most important to note that Auditor General will be part and parcel of the consideration which will be then made in concluding the report, the forensic report. My request also would be that when they are giving their conclusion on the report, if we also get sent the actual forensic report, which is exonerating any wrongdoing of anyone in the board. Thank you, Chair.
All right, no, that's fine. Honorable Liz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your permission, I'm leaving my camera off, given that my signal is apparently unstable.
Okay. Sure, that's fine.
Thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, good morning to everyone from DBSA, National Treasury, and my colleagues. CEO, the slide 5 that you showed us, and as part of the presentation you sent us, shows a very comprehensive process that's followed for investment decisions. So can you tell me how long such a process would normally take? Just an estimate, 2 months, 1 week, 24 hours? What is the kind of normal turnaround time on that process?
Can I come in, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sure. When the member asks, you can just respond so to save time and have no chair interventions unless necessary.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Lee, on this one. It depends on the complexity of the deal. A simpler deal, sometimes you can go through this process in 2-3 months on average, but we really have improved our processes. But sometimes if they are complicated, they can go on for about 6 months to a year. As I said, it depends on the complexity of the deal and also the readiness of the deal for funding. Yes.
I understand, CEO. So we're kind of looking at a quick process of around about 2 months to get that decision made. So in the case of these investments that are now under discussion, how long did the decisions for each of those take?
Seeing that this is a deal that happens on about 2006, 2007, honorable member, and unfortunately I was not even part of the bank at that time, I will really be guessing if I were to venture into the exact estimate or the estimate as to how long it took. But it was quite a somewhat long exercise. And I know that when I joined the bank in 2012, we were looking at the average time that it took for processes or to get approval. We were actually even named as a 2-year bank. Some deals actually would take in excess of 2 years. So I'm not sure this specific one, how long it took, as it also involved the engagement with the mining houses and prospective investors into the greater Tubatse and the Palade regions.
Thank you, Steve. So, Mr. Chairman, I would think that it would be useful if the administration could go back in the records to see what date the application for the investment was made and the date in which the investment was actually made. I would be interested in that, and I don't expect the CEO to be able to give me a definitive answer now. So perhaps we can get that within the next week. Is a comprehensive investment process that shouldn't take less than 2 months, but perhaps in an emergency might be reduced to maybe 1 month. But it's comprehensive, so it takes time. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm intrigued because the CEO claims to be answerable to Parliament. And made that assertion earlier on this morning. And yet, the Minister of Finance, when I asked for details of the process and due diligence followed for the 3.5 billion rand loan to SAA in January 2020, the Minister referred me to the DBSA, and the DBSA refused my prior application to give me that information. So what I'm saying is this all sounds very hollow. Indeed, much of the presentation this morning sounds very hollow. It's all very well to talk about, in general terms, what the industry does or doesn't do. But we're talking about specific investments here, specific appointments to the board, and we need to know the details of each of those. And so, Mr. Chairman, I would request that, given the stonewalling I've had from both the DBSA and the Minister of Finance with regard to the 3.5 billion rand loan made to SAA in January 2020, that appeared to have been made within about 3 days. So we have from the CEO that if the process is followed, the quickest it should be around 2 to 3 months, and given some emergency situations, I would concede it possibly could be done quicker, but not in 2 to 3 days. And so this due diligence and the timeline that was taken for the loans or the investments that were made and are now under dispute in terms of the Honorable Holomisa, as well as the 3.5 billion rand investment or loan to SAA early in 2020. And just as a general point, that could the CEO reassure this committee that, like he's reassuring us with the loans or investments in discussion, that 3.5 billion rand loan to SAA went through the full due diligence investment process as laid out on his slide 5.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I can assure you that specifically to the one, I think I have a correction to make, Mr. Lee, here, that the DBSA actually never loaned SA a 3.5 billion rand to SAA, as SAA was bankrupt. As such, there was no credit to bank. So therefore, we really did not have SA as a counterparty, but actually it was that bridging finance that actually we made to DPE. But it was far more than 3 days, as actually it involved a lot of legalese into this and a proper understanding of this process just within management before it was even taken to the board credit and investment committee.
Thank you, CEO. So what you're saying then is that the DBSA loaned money to a government department. Is that right?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Can I come in, sir?
No, I'd like the CEO to answer my question, please.
Yes, I said the counterparty to this agreement, Mr. Lee, was the Department of Public Enterprises, and with the concurrence from National Treasury. We never had SA as a counterparty as the bankrupt. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. So, do loans to government departments fall within the mandate of the DBSA? And if so, in what part of the mandate?
If I may come in, we do lend to sovereigns across the continent, but in South Africa, government departments, that is something that is done with National Treasury as government departments and provincial departments. Actually, they cannot actually enter into loan agreements, but it's an issue of National Treasury having to come in. But as I said, this was just a bridging finance to the department in the parliamentary process for the final application.
Somebody who's unmuted.
Interference, Marty, I'm not sure it's from your side. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mr.
Chair?
We are now getting feedback. So what you're saying, CEO, is that your mandate does not include loans to South African government departments and authorize this. Is that correct?
I lost you there in the beginning when you were saying what I was saying, then you disappeared and then you came back later.
My apologies. What I was saying, CEO, is that what you're saying is that your mandate would not include loans to South African government departments, but the National Treasury intervened and authorized you to make that loan. Whether you call it bridging finance or not, it was a loan.
Chair, maybe it's Marty speaking. The way...
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm asking of the CEO, and I'd like the CEO to answer.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Lee, what I'm saying is that any advancement of any facility to a government department has got to have the concurrence of National Treasury. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, it's interesting because the general information in the public domain is that the DBSA made this loan to SAA. Why then, CEO, did you not give me the information I requested from you early last year? Why did you fob me off and tell me I had to give you more detail of what I requested when it was absolutely clear what I wanted? Why did you fob me off? Because it makes a mockery of your statement earlier about being answerable to Parliament.
We really did not fob you off, Mr. Lee, and as we don't do that to when actually people come to us. But all I can say, Mr. Lee, is that as the bank, we also have to respect the confidentiality of our clients, and we tend to prefer that when people want to come for information from us, they actually go to the clients. And in this case, this is a government department that actually you have a direct oversight over, and we felt that actually it should be doable within that process, Mr. Lee, and we were not in a position to share clients' confidential information. We felt that actually we could then ask you to first give for the further details and also then to go through the client themselves so that they become the ones. Otherwise, it tends to have a very damaging effect to the bank if a confidential information of clients is released into the public. That's what actually becomes a serious conundrum for the bank, Mr. Lee. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I simply don't accept that explanation. I find it quite disturbing that after a request to the Minister of Finance, who referred me to the DBSA, I got the stonewalling. But nevertheless, Mr. Chairman, can this committee now instruct the DBSA to provide the committee with full details of the due diligence done for the investments that are the primary reason for this meeting, as well as for the 3.5 billion rand loan to the Department of Public Enterprises in January last year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, colleagues. Okay, I see a hand. May I answer, Van Rensburg?
Chair, just to note, we've made a presentation last year to the NCOP around the SAA transaction. And yes, the credit risk of SAA was not considered to be viable because they were looking for funds. In the transaction, the SAA was the counterparty, but with a guaranteed offtake, and I'm not saying a guarantee, but a firm undertaking from the Department of Public Enterprises and National Treasury that that loan will be repaid once the Division of Revenue Act has been approved, and those monies were already included in the budget, the February budget. So just to note, I think there's just a little bit of a correction around that specific item.
Mr. Chairman, if I may come in here, if I may. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so, yeah, it is disturbing to note that there is any correction required from the CEO, who clearly is not au fait with the facts. But what is also of considerable concern is that a loan is made on the basis of the word from departments. I'm not sure who, whether it was the ministers of these departments, National Treasury and Finance and DPE, that Parliament would appropriate the funds. A presumption that Parliament simply is a rubber stamp. And I think that is outrageous, and it is completely outrageous for the DBSA to have accepted that as being sufficient security to provide 3.5 billion rand to SAA, a bankrupt company, in business rescue, because it appears that the chair of the audit committee has now confirmed that the counterparty was SAA and not the Department of Public Enterprises. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, no, thank you very much. Colleagues, are there any further hands? Going once, going twice, going thrice. All right.
Should I come back?
All right.
Yeah,
wrap it up, Honorable Hadebe, and then Honorable Olumisa will come in, and then I would like to make a suggestion about how we're going to proceed.
Let's give it to the General himself, Chair.
Okay, General Olumisa, over to you.
We miss you, General.
Thank you, Honorable Young Lion. I just want to make a reference to what Minister Mboweni said earlier on about my approach in this. Minister Mboweni's insinuation is regrettable. His attitude is clear, is not in the right place. I am not accountable to him, nor can he lecture me on how to deal with allegations of maladministration, whether they come from his region in Limpopo or in my region in the Eastern Cape. So this arrogance of dealing with members of parliament in the manner in which he is doing is not helping this country. We're not here to play. Thank you.
Right, Honorable Hadebe with an H.
No, thanks, Chair. Mine was this issue of generalization in responding to question and referring us to the norms and standards, because public advertisement is also a norm and a standard. I would want, Chair, when we deal with the hearing, that we are not treated in the manner in which we were treated. When we ask direct question, we are given a statement that says the norm and standard. Yet we are specific in this case, Chair. I even made a reference of the current process which is underway, that of appointment of the NYTA board. And some of us are serving in boards. Once, Chair, you don't take keen interest in wanting to find out whether or not the process that will ultimately yield to the outcome which will produce board members that are going to preside over an entity such as this. For us, when we ask a question, a simple question, Chair, did the search company only focus on the database at their disposal, or did they advertise broadly over and above their database? Now, when one is not registered with the database of that particular company, it simply means that individual, when the vacancy arose at the time, that person won't have an opportunity to be considered. We wanted to get that understanding whether or not the board view that as fair, transparent, and inclusive process. And we did not hear that from the board. Because when you make such a bold statement as this, that this process is fair, transparent, you should be able to back it up with facts. Facts before us or responses before us seeks to suggest that the board did not do proper due diligence, given the fact that they don't have a gazetted regulation at this current juncture. One would have expected that at least they would have keen interest to say, these names that you are giving us, were they only sourced from your database, or were they generally or broadly advertised? Are you giving us what's currently best in the market? And is the best in the market only available from your database? That, Chair, on its own, it's something that we still need to probe and find out exactly why they did not saw it fit and necessary, given this allegation that we are dealing with at this current juncture, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Colleagues, this hearing has been most helpful. I know that will sound like an oxymoron considering what has happened, but it has given us insight to precisely why these issues need closer attention. Because it was an opportunity for DBSA to take us into confidence and to respond to issues so that we are in a position as Parliament to make determinations about how we're going to handle the very serious allegations. I think in the main, DBSA has not assisted themselves with what I can only call a theoretical outlook with a view to lecture and educate, devoid of the necessary bias towards accountability. I think some of the things that have emanated here insofar as utterance and behavior and conduct have been totally unacceptable. And they don't augur well for a constructive and cooperative working relationship between Parliament, the executive, and entities. So I think, colleagues, we had met in November and we agreed on that day that we would be formulating the framework for an inquiry. I think that stands and we are justified having taken that decision, judging by today. So I think what we will do is that we will now set that process into motion because we have already interacted with the AG. We've interacted with DBSA. What we'll do is we will consult now with Parliament Legal to draft on these matters. We'll consider the submissions of General Olomisa and we'll consider the submissions of DBSA. And then I know Parliament is going into recess. We will make the special application when we are finalized on these matters in terms of process. And then in the interim, we will be working with the AG and the SIU on this matter. It's because we have now had both sides of the story. Ours is to fill in the blanks and the gaps with an inquiry so that we bring this matter to a logical parliamentary conclusion and make the necessary recommendations and the necessary referrals, because that's what oversight and accountability is about. We just we have to do it. There's no two ways about it. So I think that to DBSA, the broader frame issues that have been raised assist, but the generalizations have not, as members have been saying through and through. So, colleagues, I think we can leave it at that. That we will now set into motion the issues accordingly, and then we'll find time to meet with Parliament Legal as a committee and have a family meeting so that we can make the necessary determinations. As I was saying earlier on at the start of the meeting, I'm not aware of the correspondence which the General referred to. If he can transmit that to myself and the Secretariat, that will be fantastic, so that we can be able to deal with these issues. I mean, I think some of the one thing that the chairperson of the board has said, speaking about the issues, Honorable Hate was saying that ministers have come and gone and have not finalized on certain aspects. So those are all really the issues that we need to look at. So that was the purpose of today, because we also need to get a sense of the thinking of DBSA. So what will happen, Mr. Chairperson? We're going to be in touch with with yourselves after we have finalized our consultations with Parliament Legal, the AG, and the SIU, who are working with us on all the matters that we are dealing with. Because, colleagues, we still have to find time to deal with the Housing Development Agency allegations as well in a similar fashion. So I think let's take one entity at a time and finish, because there's just a lot of work. I say that so that there's clarity. We are not picking on DBSA. We're dealing with all the allegations that are before us. ESCOM is due to submit to us along similar lines. I think their 90 days is also coming to an end. Compensation Fund, NSFAS, have to submit in June on the issues of the forensic audit. So I think, colleagues, all these matters combined are what are going to be our immediate focus in the coming weeks. And we will engage with the House Chairperson and the presiding officers and the parliamentary chief whips for us to navigate our program through the recess period in a manner which will respect recess, but also make sure that we do our work. I think, colleagues, we will find time next week so that then we can create a schedule of all the submissions of things that you want on this, because a lot has been said, so that we can consolidate it properly and send comprehensive correspondence to DBSA. But I think let us now start the process with Parliament Legal. Some issues have been covered, but I think a lot of blanks have not been filled insofar as what we have had today. So I would like to make that suggestion and proposal, colleagues, as a way forward. Now, what we had agreed to in November, we set it into motion now, having observed the alterum partem rule, because we've got a sense of what we are dealing with now, and so that we don't shoot blanks. So, colleagues, I'll hand over to you. Honorable Hadebe, ngibona screening.
No, thanks, Chair. My appeal, Chair, is that we respect and we're mindful of the fact that executive authorities have got a lot of work to do. But in the next appearance, Chair, I humbly appeal that at least when we start with the hearing, for us to do justice, we'll appeal for them to be present from the start to the end, not taking into account the schedule of work and other things that they ought to do. We respect that, and we're fully mindful and cognizant of the fact that there's more to it than just appearing in committees. But for us to be seen to be doing justice, the humble plea and request that when you look into the meeting schedule and the date, please check the availability of all stakeholders involved, so that we are all a part of the process when it starts and towards its logical conclusion. That will be my humble plea, Chair.
No, that's fine. I think we will, of course, we will work with the offices accordingly. We are not dictators. I think we will speak to all the necessary offices and find amicable dates for all these things, so we can tie it down correctly. It's not a problem. The family meeting is just for us next week to meet with legal and tie down on these matters, because there's also the considerations about that this is a banking space. So we need to be sensitive to the realities that come with the environment we are dealing with. I think that is not lost on us. It's very important. We will forge ahead responsibly adopting the Hamba Kahle approach without compromising on our duty of holding people accountable. So no, that will be duly observed. So I think that's why we need to have our family meeting and tie down on these matters. So colleagues, that's the proposal. If we're in agreement, I see Mphathiswa is back. He's like Harry Potter in between the two worlds of Parliament. But so I think we'll leave it at that, colleagues. If there's nothing else, I'm checking our group here. Colleagues, you fine?
Yes, Chair.
Right. Right. Thanks. Great. We'll find time. We'll discuss the data amongst ourselves during the day and see when we can have our family meeting on this. Right. As is customary, colleagues, I will give an opportunity to the executive authority, the minister, to have a word, as we always do, and then I will wrap it up. And Minister, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. I was in the NCOP. We were voting on the division of revenue bill, and I had to say something there. And then after they voted, 7 in favor and 7 in favor and 1 against. So I've come back a bit in a good mood. But thank you very much for affording the DBSA the opportunity to say their piece and for us to say our piece. I think it's very important that the parliamentary structures hold these institutions and the executive accountable. But rest assured that for my part, I believe in the highest standards of corporate governance, whilst not micromanaging the board of directors or the executive. And it's very important that we try and develop the highest standards of corporate governance in the state-owned enterprises, and that's what we try and do. I take your criticisms very seriously because I periodically engage in what I call criticism and self-criticism as we learned in the political literature. And I very much appreciate all you do. And Honorable Holomisa, we can always discuss these things in the House or out of the House. I very much appreciate your insights, as always. So without much ado, Honorable Chairperson, thank you very much. And to the extent that I might have used some harsh words earlier, I would like to withdraw that and apologize for that, because the good working relationship between yourselves and myself is very important as we push our country forward and meet the basic needs of our people and engage in a developmental framework that will benefit our country and our society and Africa at large. And the DBSA is very much central to the infrastructure development program in particular. And working together, I'm sure we can do more. Chairperson, Honorable Chair, Honorable members, thank you very much indeed. Thanks to the Chair of the DBSA and his team. Thank you very much indeed for your patience.
All right, so thank you, Minister. Let's thank the DBSA team led by the Chairperson for being here today, and we will of course, be in communication, and we, of course, welcome the minister's withdrawal. I saw on that happy note of cooperation and mutual respect. Colleagues, I will, tomorrow we are meeting with the SIU on the next batch of reports into the perennial headache of corruption, which is just pervasive in the country. So the SIU will be briefing us tomorrow at 9:30, as usual. And that will be, the presentation should have reached you. It was circulated last night, so I think all members should have it. If not, please just advise so that we can prepare accordingly for that. And then we will be in touch about when we meet for next week on a mutual day, and one which the presiding officers will agree to. And then there was another matter. Right, no, and so I will send that in the group. So colleagues, thank you very much. Right, Mam T.
Good morning, Chairperson. Please, I apologize. The network is so a problem today.
Understand.
The one thing, Chair, I haven't read. Yes, the reports of SIU have been dropped. I haven't gone through them, but in case these are not part of those, because I understand that the SIU is bringing us a progress report on the work that they presented to us the last time we met. However, I would want to make just a request, Chair, if you would allow that. There are these that are in the public space of the work that is being done by the SIU, the CEO of SASA that pronounced herself to say she's cancelling the tender and so on. I really would want to hear more. The matter of the Department of Health, between the Department of Health and the allegations against the minister is on the public space. Can we get more? The issue of the police, the 1 billion matter within the police as part of the COVID-19 processes in this one, it becomes the PPE, as well as I think those three, Chair, if you can just get an indication, the progress that the SIU is making, so that as COPA we can be on par with everybody else. I just remember these three, Chair. There might be others if members can. I'm just requesting that indulgence from you. Thanks, Chair.
No, that is fine. I don't, having gone through the presentation, not all of them are there as you raise. I think the SIU is here, so they've heard that, but we will send them a note now. Just that we will also want updates on those three matters that you raised. I don't think that will be a problem. So I'll just, Stombi, Ben, if we can just get in touch with the SIU when we're done here, so that we can just be aware that we want to raise those issues with them. Right, Honorable Hattabi will be the last one.
Okay, so that I understand you correctly and we're all in the same page. You said issues that we'd want to make follow-up with DBSA, should we forward them in writing, or have they captured everything that we need from them coming from our side? Is my understanding correct?
No, what we'll do is that we will, when we meet, we will discuss it as a committee and send them a consolidated list or schedule of what it is that we want. I think Tando has captured some of the issues now. I've also got them. So when we meet next week, we will put that together and send it through. So you can start preparing your list now. It's fine.
Okay. Now I've got plenty now. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Let me thank the SIU as well and the AG. And then, colleagues, the meeting on that note stands adjourned. We will meet tomorrow at 9:30 for the briefing by the SIU. Thank you very much, and see you in the House when we do the Parliament's budget vote this afternoon. The meeting stands.
As per the standard norm and practice, Chair.
Waiting, Pella.
Don't leave the chair.
Recording stopped.
I'm improving, Chair. I think I'm far ahead of Honorable Peggy.
All right, colleagues, see you this
Yes,
afternoon.
yes, colleagues.